Apple, I'm a big fan of Apple. They just launched their new MacBook Pros yesterday. And I think one of the big news that popped up was the fact that they have a brand new chip. So since last year, they were looking at designing their own chips. They call it the M1, and now they've come up with two new ones. So effectively creating three new chips. And they designed it all by themselves. And what they do is they have a third-party company. I think right now it's called Taiwan Semiconductors, to create it for them, fabricate it for them, and then they put that in the MacBook Pros. I believe it did a grin because we saw M1 and M1, the 3. It's going across almost all Mac devices. So that includes the iPhone, that includes the Macs, the iPads, I believe even the watches, right? So one thing to note here is that, number one, we didn't really see a big increase in price for Apple from pre-event to post-event, right? We saw a little bit of a hike pre-event, mainly because of speculation, but it was actually quite well rumored, if you will. I knew this was going to come out, that they were going to launch this MacBook Pro. So whether it was priced in before, that's one question. But number two is we've had a semiconductor shortage, and we did we did talk about this last week, right? I think we brought up the EV with Tesla and all of that, and we expect it to go into 2022. Now, how would this impact Apple? And given the fact that they have just launched this brand new 3 chips, do you see other companies prioritizing the other semiconductors, which give them, or the other chips, which give them maybe a bit more revenue than what Apple is giving, therefore slowing down the production of MacBook Pros or Apple, Apple devices? Or do we think, you know what, Apple's probably going to pay top dollar for it. They're going to get the priority out of it, and they need a plant to do that very quickly. Now, it's a brand new design; it's their own design, but other people still got to learn it and fabricate it. Right? What do we think here in order to look at cost of sales as well as total sales for Apple?
That's difficult. I think. Look,
that's why I keep quiet.
Yeah, we're just talking about things I don't like today because I have an Apple device, which is my work phone, and I try not to touch it. So that's my extent of the Apple ecosystem. But yeah, I like talking about semiconductors. So I look that. I mean, and even before this news, right? It was last week or 2 weeks back that Apple's share price took a hit because they said we'll produce less iPhone 13 next year, because of a chip shortage, and therefore I'm not going to sell as much. My revenue isn't going to be as great, and that's that, right? And then the share price fell. And well, I think that encapsulates the issue, right? Because all of these companies are, whether it's Apple, the car manufacturers, they are really relying on the fabs to create the chips for them, and there's 2 or 3 of them that they are actually good at it, especially at the very cutting edge. And I think TSMC has 50% increase in profit margins over the past year in their latest financials. So they are skimming the fat off, and Apple's in a rock and a hard place, right? If they pay more for the chips, that's great, but their profit margin suffers, right? And so they can sell more, but they have a lower profit margin, erodes their exclusivity and things like that. But alternatively, they could not sell as much, but then the overall profit suffers because they don't have enough sales. The one thing that they maybe haven't tried, I don't know, is just to increase the price and pass all costs onto the consumer, right? And try to leverage on that fanboy, type of hype. I like that, huh? But I don't know how effective, and that to me sounds like a really effective strategy, but I don't know how they are actually playing it out, because that leads to future problems with pricing and if you sell a phone for $2,000 now, your next generation can be cheaper. So there are flow-on effects of that as well, I think. So yeah, and they are in a bit of a tough position to be in, but they know their operations, they are good at their operations, and they have good processes. So I think this is what they mean when you buy the business, right? You know that even if there are difficulties like this, there's maybe an optimal way out and manage, and you can kind of trust management to bring the company out of it.
Got it.
Just
Joel,
yeah,
what do
probably
you think?
just a fun question. Not so much on the stock itself, but I'm just curious. Do both of you own iPhones?
Yes.
I have an iPhone 12, I think, but it's my work phone. I don't use it except for Outlook.
So actually, Anthony, very interesting. Going back to the point, let's say Apple, really does bring all the cost to the consumer, right? Do you, the consumers, because you guys have iPhones, do you have a maximum price limit in your head already? That let's say if they sell it above the certain this price, you won't buy anymore. Because I know there are certain people that no matter what price Apple throws at them, they will just buy it because it's Apple, right? But majority of consumers, they are realistic. If its price is too expensive, they will go to another alternative. So do you have like a cap limit on how much you'll pay for a phone? I'm assuming that you're with Apple for a long time already.
Yeah, right. I think this
I
is
do.
where you were at. I would say $400. So that's never getting me an iPhone.
So I'll go up to $1,000 for a phone, not $2,000.
All right. So
Yeah,
is it
1,000 plus is okay.
so is it really possible to actually pass the cost to consumers if they keep increasing? And if they release one generation, it's 2,000. Like Anthony, like you said, they cannot price it lower than that for the next one. It just got to keep getting more expensive. Right, there has to be a limit where everyone's just like, hey, why am I'm not going to pay $3,000 for this phone anymore.
Yeah, but I mean...
So I don't...
Sorry, Rat, go ahead.
I don't think they're going to raise their price. Mainly because that's not the sort of company that they are. They always give a new product with the same price and drop the rest. If there is an increase of price, like we saw with the iPhone Pro Max, or I think whatever it is, the high, I think almost $2,000, there is a significant difference, right? So for example, if you compare $1,000 phone to a $2,000 phone, what's the difference? Right? An extra camera, this or that, bigger screen, etc., etc. And even for me, that's a lot of money, right? That's a MacBook.
Yeah, that's
I could
insane.
buy,
Yeah.
right? I'd rather get a cheaper phone. But I think that's really where they're coming at. They're not going to just raise the prices because of supply issues. At least I don't believe that's how Apple operates, right down to its core. They have a billion cash reserves. I think it was like, I don't know how many billions of cash reserve that they're willing to, that they can use this as a short-term gap. But I feel that they're not going to raise the price. So the question here is to just slow down supply and just slow down the uptake of their new MacBook Pro, since they were talking about this new M1 chip being a 2-year transition, and therefore take a small hit in terms of costing or in terms of revenue, or they lose some balance sheet, pay that money off to, they were talking about move from TSMC to Samsung, right? And do that. Or have they managed, by designing this M1 chip, to increase profit margin, therefore allowing to pay the fabricator a little bit more to prioritize theirs? So I guess those are questions for me that I have. I don't believe it's going to be passed on to the end user because they are hitting their limit already.
Yeah.
That said, I do agree with you that Apple obviously has a cult following. People will buy because it's Apple and because it's a new product. But that's their early adopters, right? As we know in the graph, the main peak happens with the rational people that are switching between an Android and an iPhone. Yeah, so I think that's my thinking. I think in terms of stock price for Apple, I think it will hover roughly about the same. I think Q4 will be very much on nerve to see how it's been doing, whether it be slowing down, whether it's been going up, or whether it's staying stable. But one thing for me, which saw the decline in the price for the iPhone 13, because they were looking to reduce supply, or say it's slowing down, is because Apple's revenue, 52% of it or something like that, is from its iPhones. So I think it won't affect the MacBook much, but it will affect the iPhones. So I think they should really be prioritizing on that, or looking at other ways to diversify to reduce what the iPhone has over Apple. You take away the iPhone now, Apple is gone.
Yeah.
So I think for me, that's the worry. That's the worry the next 5 years for Tim Cook.
Oh, interesting. Thanks for sharing. Yeah.
Yeah, how do you actually make a phone better? I always feel like every time I change phones, I'm just getting something slightly faster with a slightly better camera, and That's it. But then again, I don't use it much. So
I mean, that's the,
yes, right. So right now I believe they're just focusing on the camera. It's you're buying a camera which got a phone function on it.
and
I mean,
it's-
it's,
I can't see the iPhone in
and it's
it.
a lot on marketing. Right? Most of it is on marketing. Like, this is going to be the best, hype and everything. And they're going to they're using the designs from before. So before they're using the sharp square edges, then they go into the round edges, and then they go back to the square edges. And it just seems new
Yeah.
because, I mean, they just released it. So to consumers, like, wow, I must have it.
Yes, it's a little bit of that cult following. But I mean, I think one thing to note though, they did revolutionize the phone industry, so they need to revolutionize it more. Otherwise, it's going to end up like Nokia. I think.
yeah, hopefully they find a new product line. I think that's the
I think they will. Hopefully, right? I mean, the watch was technically their new product line, and their software ecosystem is the reason they're still alive.
Yeah.
That's what I truly believe in. Their hardwares go around, but you can't use a watch without a phone.
Yeah.
Right? You can't pair that to an Android. You can't use. I think EarPods work really well and really seamless with the MacBook Pro as well as an iPhone.